Hello, survivors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, and thank you in advance. Please leave the name of the city you're listening from in the comment section below. It helps us see our reach in the community. Let's start the story. Final lap at Daytona. The vibrations from my engine pulsed through the steering wheel as I gripped it tight, sweat beading under my racing suit despite the air conditioning. Through my visor, I could see Ricky Bobby's blue Chevy hugging the inside lane just 2 car lengths ahead. He'd been leading for the past 30 laps, but I'd been steadily gaining ground, waiting for my moment. The roar of engines filled my helmet, a symphony I'd known intimately for 20 years of professional racing. This was my shot at a 5th Super Cup championship. One last push, one perfect maneuver, and I'd cement my legacy as Jimmy McGibbs, the greatest stock car driver the South had ever seen. "Looking good, Jimmy," my crew chief Tony's voice crackled through the radio. "You've got the speed. Wait for the backstretch, then make your move." I eased off slightly, positioning myself for the pass. The crowd in the stands was a blur of color and movement as we thundered past at nearly 200 mph. The afternoon sun glinted off Cole's rear bumper, almost blinding. My fingers flexed on the wheel, muscle memory from countless races guiding every micro-adjustment. As we entered the backstretch, I spotted my opening. Cole drifted high, leaving just enough room on the inside. I pressed the accelerator, my engine screaming as I pulled alongside him. Through the side window, I could see him turn his head slightly, aware of my challenge. That's when everything changed. A figure stumbled onto the track about 50 yards ahead. Even at that speed, I could make out the dark stains covering their shirt. The way they moved with a strange, stiff gait. Cole swerved hard right, clipping my front bumper. The world became a blur of sky and asphalt as my car went airborne. The impact was deafening. Metal screamed and glass shattered as my car rolled, each hit sending shockwaves through my body. The safety harness dug into my shoulders, my helmet bouncing against the headrest. I caught glimpses of track, sky, crowd, track again in a nauseating kaleidoscope. When the car finally settled upside down, the silence was overwhelming. Smoke filled my nostrils, and something warm trickled down my forehead. The engine ticked as it cooled, and somewhere in the distance I heard screaming. Not the excited screams of racing fans. These were different, primal, terrified. "Jimmy, Jimmy, do you copy?" Tony's voice was frantic in my ear. I released my harness, bracing myself as I dropped to the roof of the inverted car. Years of safety training kicked in as I assessed myself for injuries. Nothing felt broken. The cockpit was crushed, but the roll cage had done its job. "I'm okay," I managed, my voice hoarse. "What happened to Cole?" No response, just static. I crawled through the shattered window, glass crunching beneath my racing suit. As I emerged from the wreckage, the screaming grew louder. Smoke from my crashed car partially obscured my view, but I could make out people running in the stands. Security guards were sprinting toward something near turn 4. Behind me, the remaining racers were still at full speed, unaware of what lay ahead. A horrific scene unfolded in my rearview mirror. More figures had wandered onto the track. One car swerved violently, spinning into the wall. Another tried to thread between 2 of the wandering figures but lost control, flipping into the infield. The sound of screeching tires and crashing metal filled the air as car after car joined the growing wreckage. Through the smoke and chaos, I saw track officials rushing to help, but something was wrong. The people they were trying to help weren't acting like crash victims. They were attacking the officials, lunging at them with vicious intensity. My ears were ringing from the crash, but I heard the officials' scream cut short. More figures were climbing over the barrier walls, moving with that same bizarre rigidity. The crowd's panic was spreading like a wave through the stands. "Tony?" I tried the radio again. Nothing. I started running toward pit row, my legs shaky from the adrenaline. Other drivers who had stopped after the crash were climbing out of their cars, confusion evident in their postures. One of the safety crews was approaching in their truck, lights flashing. That's when the second scream pierced the air. I turned to see the track official who had been attacked now rising to his feet. Blood poured from a gaping wound in his neck, but he was moving. The world I had known, the world of checkered flags and champagne celebrations, was ending right before my eyes. I just didn't know it yet. The safety truck screeched to a halt nearby, its driver leaning out the window. "McGibbs, get in, now!" I didn't hesitate. As I climbed into the truck, I caught a glimpse of the Speedway's giant screen. The broadcast was still running, showing utter chaos unfolding in the pit area. People attacking each other, blood staining the asphalt, and everywhere, that same stiff, predatory movement spreading through the crowd. The driver threw the truck into reverse. "Something's wrong," he said, his voice shaking. "Really wrong. They're saying it's not just here, it's all over the city." Through the windshield, I watched as more people climbed over the barriers. The proud, racing-obsessed crowd of Daytona transforming into something else entirely. The sound of their collective moans carried across the track, mixing with the screams of those still running. My championship dream had turned into a nightmare, and it was only the beginning. The safety truck weaved through debris and abandoned vehicles, its tires squealing against the asphalt. Through the windshield, I watched people fleeing in all directions, their panic spreading like wildfire. The driver, whose name tag read Keith, kept glancing in his mirrors, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "The media center," I said, pointing to the towering structure overlooking the track. "It's elevated, secure, and has communication equipment." Keith nodded, swinging the truck toward the building. As we approached, I spotted familiar faces. Members of various racing teams huddled near the entrance. Among them was Tony, my crew chief, ushering people inside. We pulled up to the entrance and Tony rushed over. His usual composed demeanor was gone, replaced by raw concern. "Jimmy, thank God. We've been trying to reach you on the radio. What's happening out there?" Keith asked, climbing out of the truck. Before Tony could answer, a series of crashes echoed from the parking lot. We turned to see more people staggering between the cars, moving with that same predatory purpose. A woman screamed as one of them grabbed her, sinking teeth into her shoulder. "Inside now," Tony commanded, holding the door. We rushed into the building and security staff helped us barricade the entrance. The media center was already filled with shell-shocked survivors, drivers, crew members, officials, and broadcasters. Multiple TV screens lined the walls, each showing news coverage of similar chaos unfolding across the city. "They're saying it's some kind of infection," one of the broadcasters explained, his headset still around his neck. "Started showing up in hospitals this morning. People getting sick, becoming violent." I watched the screens, trying to process what I was seeing. Traffic jams clogged the highways. Crowds fought outside hospitals. Police tried desperately to contain situations that were rapidly spiraling out of control. "Phone lines are jammed," Tony added. "But we've been monitoring emergency frequencies. It's not just Daytona. Reports are coming in from Jacksonville, Orlando, Miami." A technical director spoke up from his station. "Just lost the feed from Miami. Station went dark mid-broadcast." The room fell silent as that information sank in. These weren't just isolated incidents. This was something bigger, something none of us had ever faced before. "We need a plan," I said, breaking the tension. "We can't stay here forever." Tony nodded, spreading out a track diagram on a nearby desk. "Most of the haulers are blocked in by the crowd. But the garages," he pointed to the complex of buildings near Turn 1. "There are still cars there, race-ready cars." "You want to use the race cars to escape?" Keith asked incredulously. "They're fast, maneuverable, and built to take impact," I explained, studying the diagram. "But they're also temperamental. After that chaos on the track, we'd need to check them over, maybe make repairs." One of my mechanics, Diego, joined us at the desk. "I counted at least 6 cars in various states down there. Give me an hour with each. I could probably get 3 or 4 running solid." "The garages are at least quarter-mile from here," Tony noted. "Through God knows what's out there." I looked around the room at the gathered survivors. Fear was evident on every face, but there was also determination. These were racing people, mechanics, engineers, problem solvers. If anyone could figure this out, it was them. "We'll need a team," I said. "Small enough to move quickly, but enough people to handle repairs and security." Diego immediately volunteered. "I'm in. No one knows those engines better than me." "I'll go too," said Renee, our team's logistics manager. She'd served in the military before joining racing. "I know my way around a weapon, if we can find any." We gathered around a digital display showing security camera feeds from around the track. Most of the infected seemed drawn to movement and noise, clustering around areas where people were still fleeing. The garage area was relatively clear, but that could change quickly. "Security office on the first floor," one of the guards offered. "Has a weapons locker, standard stuff, batons, tasers. No firearms, though." Tony scratched his chin thoughtfully. "We'll need a distraction, something to draw them away from our path to the garage." "The PA system," Keith suggested. "We could broadcast something from another part of the track." As we refined the plan, more survivors joined our discussion. Each person offered different skills, different perspectives. We weren't just random people anymore. We were becoming a team, united by the need to survive. We settled on a small group for the garage run. Me, Diego, Renee, and 2 security guards named Walsh and Rodriguez. Tony would coordinate from the media center, using the cameras to guide us. The rest would prepare for evacuation, gathering supplies and keeping watch. Looking out the windows at the growing number of infected below, I felt the weight of what we were about to attempt. One mistake, one wrong move, and we'd be joining those mindless figures prowling the track. "Give us an hour to gear up," I told Tony. "Then we move." He nodded, his expression grim. "Just like a pit stop, Jimmy. Quick and precise. No room for errors." As we began gathering equipment, I couldn't help but think about how quickly everything had changed. This morning, my biggest concern had been winning a race. Now, I was planning an extremely dangerous rescue operation, just to survive. The infected below continued their aimless wandering, occasionally drawn to movement or sound. Their groans carried faintly through the windows, a constant reminder of what awaited us outside. Whatever they were, sick, rabid, or something we didn't have a name for yet, they weren't going to make our escape easy. We had one shot at this. One chance to get those cars and get out before the situation got worse. Looking at my makeshift team, I saw the same determination I felt. We were about to attempt the most important pit stop of our lives. The security office yielded limited but useful equipment: 2 batons, a taser, and some heavy-duty flashlights. Renee distributed them efficiently, her military experience showing in how she assessed each item's potential use. We also found maintenance radios, testing them on a private channel to ensure clear communication with Tony in the media center. "Remember," Renee said, checking our equipment one final time, "these infected respond to sound. We move quiet, we move fast." Diego had grabbed essential tools from the broadcast crew's repair kit. "First priority when we reach the garage, check the fuel cells and engine damage. After that crash, we might have debris in places we can't see." Through the windows, we watched as Keith activated the PA system on the opposite end of the track. The sound of engine revving echoed across the speedway, drawing many of the infected away from our planned route. It wouldn't last long, but it gave us an opening. We descended the stairs in formation, Renee taking point while Rodriguez watched our rear. The stairwell smelled of sweat and fear, our footsteps echoing despite our attempts at stealth. At ground level, Walsh peered through the door's window, counting the infected still visible in the area. 8, maybe 10, he whispered. Scattered, most heading toward the sound. Tony's voice crackled in our earpieces. Security cameras show a clear path along pit row. Stay close to the wall. We emerged into the late afternoon sun, keeping low and moving quickly. The smell hit me first, copper and decay mixing with gasoline and rubber. Pieces of crashed cars littered the track, and dark stains marked the asphalt where people had... I forced the thought away, focusing on our objective. An infected stumbled into view about 30 yards ahead. Walsh raised his baton, but Renee held up her hand. We froze, watching as it wandered past without noticing us. Up close, I could see the gray pallor of its skin. the vacant expression, the torn flesh around its mouth. "Garage access is through the crew area," Diego whispered, pointing to a door partially hidden behind some debris. We were halfway there when Tony's urgent voice came through. "Movement from the infield. Large group heading your way." Through gaps in the wreckage I could see them, at least 20 infected shambling forward, their vacant eyes fixed on our movement. The PA system's effect was wearing off. "Run!" Renee commanded, abandoning stealth for speed. We sprinted for the door, our footsteps drawing attention. The infected changed direction, their collective groans rising as they spotted us. Rodriguez reached the door first, yanking it open as Walsh and I covered the rear. Inside, the crew area was dark and cluttered. Trophy cases lay shattered, and papers scattered across the floor showed signs of panic. A blood trail led down one hallway, but we took the opposite route, following Diego's lead toward the garage access. "Two more coming in from your left," Tony warned through the radio. They burst through a side door, a man in racing coveralls and what had once been a security guard. Walsh swung his baton, catching one in the knee. It fell but kept crawling forward with frightening determination. Renee handled the other, her military training evident as she used its momentum to send it crashing into a wall. "Doors jammed," Diego called from ahead, pushing against the heavy metal barrier. Rodriguez and I joined him, throwing our weight against it, while Walsh and Renee kept the infected at bay. With a grinding screech, it finally gave way, revealing the vast garage area beyond. The space was eerily quiet, morning sunlight streaming through high windows. Tools lay scattered across workbenches, and half-assembled cars sat on lifts like mechanical skeletons. Our target vehicles were lined up along the back wall, 6 stock cars in various states of damage from the track chaos. "Tony, we're in," I reported. "How's it look outside?" "Growing crowd by the entrance you used, but the garage doors are clear for now." Diego moved quickly between the cars, assessing each one with practiced eyes. "This one's fuel cell is ruptured. That one's got frame damage. Wait." He stopped at a familiar blue Chevy. This was Bobby's backup car. Engines intact, fuel cells good. Metal scraped against concrete as the infected tore through our makeshift barricade in the crew area. Rodriguez spun toward the sound, his face tightening with concern. Walsh and Rodriguez moved to secure the entrance while Renee kept watch through the garage doors. "We've got 2 more good possibilities," Diego continued, pointing to a red Ford and a black Dodge. "But they'll need work, crash damage. But nothing we can't fix." "How long?" I asked, already grabbing tools. 20 minutes per car minimum, and that's if everything goes smooth." Another crash, closer this time. Walsh called out, "They're through. We need to seal these doors." Working frantically, we managed to chain the main doors shut, using tool cabinets as additional barricades. The infected pounded against them, their relentless assault creating a rhythm of dull thuds that set my teeth on edge. We split into teams, Diego and I working on the cars while Renee, Walsh, and Rodriguez maintained a defensive perimeter. The work was challenging, each minute measured by the growing number of infected outside. "Fuel lines crimped on this one," Diego muttered, sliding out from under the Ford. "Need to replace it or we'll have problems halfway out." I was elbow deep in the Dodge's engine compartment when Renee spotted movement through the high windows. Glass exploded inward as infected stumbled through the high windows, their bodies dropping heavily to the garage floor. Rodriguez rushed to help, swinging his baton at the first one that rose, but he didn't see the second one behind him. The scream that tore from his throat as teeth sank into his neck will haunt me forever. We watched in horror as he was pulled down, more infected piling onto him. His eyes met mine for one final moment, filled with terror and understanding, before disappearing under the mass of gnashing teeth and grasping hands. Renee pulled me back as I moved to help him. "He's gone," she hissed, her voice tight with grief. "We need to finish these cars now." "Tony," I called into the radio, "we need options." His response was cut short by static, then silence. The radios were dead. The pounding at the doors grew louder, metal groaning under the strain. Our barricades wouldn't hold much longer. Diego was still working desperately on the last car, but we all knew the same thing. We were about to be overrun. Rodriguez's death changed everything. The garage, once our sanctuary, had become a tomb. The constant pounding at the doors took on a different meaning now, each thud a reminder of what waited for us if we failed. "The Ford's almost ready," Diego called from beneath the car. His voice strained. Fuel lines patched, but the steering column's still loose. Walsh dragged another tool cabinet against the door, metal screeching across concrete. "Make it quick. These barricades won't hold much longer." I worked frantically on the Chevy's engine, my hands slick with grease and sweat. The familiar smell of motor oil mixed with the metallic stench of blood from Rodriguez's. I pushed the thought away, focusing on the task. One wrong connection, one missed detail, and these cars would become our coffins instead of our salvation. Through the windows, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garage floor. More infected pressed against the glass, their vacant faces distorted by the safety wire embedded in the panes. The bloody smears they left behind turned the sunlight in sickly orange. "Jimmy!" Renee's voice cut through my concentration. She stood by the black Dodge, flashlight beam revealing something that made my stomach sink. "Transmission's completely shot. This one's not going anywhere." 2 cars then. We'd have to make it work with just 2 cars. A sharp crack split the air as one of the window panes gave way. Glass rained down as an infected tumbled through, followed by another. Walsh moved to intercept them, his baton connecting with hollow thuds against tissue and bone. But there were more coming. "Diego, we're out of time," I shouted, slamming the Chevy's hood shut. "Just one more." He grunted between breaths, still working beneath the Ford. The sound of his wrench turning bolts was nearly lost under the growing chorus of hungry moans. Renee positioned herself between Diego and the advancing infected, her military training evident in every measured movement. When the first one got too close, she struck with lethal precision, driving her baton through its eye socket. But for each one she dropped, 2 more stumbled forward. The main doors buckled inward, wood splintering as the barricades began to fail. Through the gaps, grasping hands reached in, fingers clawing at the air. The chains wouldn't hold much longer. "Diego!" I moved to help Renee as she backed toward the Ford. "Done." He rolled out from under the car, his face streaked with grease and fear. Both cars should run, but the Ford's steering still. The rest of his warning was lost as the doors finally gave way. The infected poured in, a mass of torn flesh and mindless hunger. Our barricades, our planning, our preparations, none of it had been enough. "Get to the cars," Renee commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Jimmy, take the Chevy. Diego, you're with me in the Ford." Walsh swung his baton in wide arcs, trying to clear a path. "Go, I'll hold them." An infected grabbed his arm, teeth sinking into his wrist. He screamed, more in rage than pain, and used his free hand to drive his baton into its skull. But the damage was done. We all knew what that bite meant. "Walsh," I started, but he cut me off. "Just go." He backed toward the far corner, drawing as many infected as he could with him. "Get the hell out of here." I dove into the Chevy, muscle memory taking over as I hit the ignition. The engine roared to life, drowning out the sounds of Walsh's last stand. In the rearview mirror, I saw Diego and Renee climbing into the Ford. The garage's main bay door was still sealed. I didn't hesitate. Dropping the car into first gear, I floored the accelerator. The Chevy's engine screamed as we charged forward, metal shrieking as we tore through the door. Daylight flooded in as we burst onto pit row. I fought the steering wheel, the car wanting to fishtail on the smooth concrete. Behind me, I heard the Ford's engine rev as Diego and Renee followed. The track ahead was chaos. Infected wandered everywhere, drawn by the engine noise. Bodies, both moving and still, littered the asphalt. Through it all, I could see our escape route, the service road leading to the Speedway's south exit. "Stay close," I shouted into the radio, hoping the channel still worked. "We'll have to." The sound of crunching metal and shattering glass cut me off. In my mirror, I saw the Ford swerving wildly, the loose steering column finally giving way. Diego fought for control, but the car slammed hard into the pit wall. I hit the brakes, tires squealing as the Chevy slid sideways. The infected were already moving toward the wreck, their single-minded pursuit giving them terrible purpose. Through the Ford's broken windshield, I could see Renee moving. She was alive. Diego wasn't visible in the driver's seat. The radio crackled. Renee's voice, tight with pain. "Get out of here, Jimmy. Get to the media center, tell them." Her words dissolved into static as more infected swarmed the wreck. I sat frozen, watching helplessly as they overwhelmed the Ford. The engine was still running, as if mocking our failure. Every instinct screamed at me to help. But I knew it was too late. Walsh's sacrifice, Rodriguez's death. It would all mean nothing if I died here too. Hands shaking, I put the car in gear. "I'm sorry," I whispered, and hit the gas. The Chevy's engine roared as I navigated through the speedway's maze of destruction. Every turn revealed new horrors. Overturned vehicles, bloody handprints on walls, bodies that didn't stay still. The weight of what happened in the garage pressed down on me with each mile marker I passed. The radio remained silent. No response from Tony or anyone else in the media center. My hands trembled on the wheel, but years of racing experience kept the car steady. Each gear shift was muscle memory. Each turn calculated despite the chaos around me. As I approached the media center, something was wrong. The barriers we'd set up were scattered, doors hung open, and dark shapes moved behind the ground floor windows. My stomach tightened as I killed the engine, letting momentum carry the car to a quiet stop. The sun hung low now, painting everything in deep shadows. I grabbed my baton and slipped out of the car, staying low. The entrance we'd used earlier was blocked by fallen debris, but I knew another way. The loading dock around back. Blood trails marked the concrete leading to the dock. Fresh blood. I followed them, every step measured, every breath controlled. A body lay crumpled by the door. Keith, the safety truck driver who'd saved me hours ago. His eyes stared sightlessly upward, a radio clutched in his lifeless hand. The loading dock door was ajar, voices filtered down from above. Human voices, urgent and afraid. I keyed the radio I'd taken from Keith. "Tony, anyone copy?" Static crackled, then, "Jimmy, thank God. 3rd floor west office, hurry." I climbed the stairs, passing signs of struggle on each landing. The 2nd floor was worst. Papers scattered, furniture overturned. Walls painted with arterial sprays. The sounds of feeding echoed from darkened doorways. The 3rd floor was quieter, but that silence carried its own warning. I found Tony and the survivors barricaded in the broadcast booth, 12 people crammed into a space meant for 4. They'd pushed filing cabinets against the doors and covered the windows with black fabric. "The others?" Tony asked as they let me in. His face fell when I shook my head. "Rodriguez, Walsh." My voice caught. "Renee and Diego." The Ford steering failed. "I couldn't." "You did what you had to," Tony said firmly. "We lost people here too. The infected breached the lower floors. Keith bought us time to get up here. But..." A woman I recognized as one of the race officials spoke up. "We can't stay. They're still getting in." She was right. Even now I could hear them in the halls, drawn by our voices. The barricades wouldn't hold forever. "The Chevy," I said. "It's fast, reliable, but it won't hold everyone." The room fell silent as that reality sank in. 12 survivors, 1 car. The math was brutal. "I can take 5, I continued. "Any more and we risk getting stuck, losing maneuverability." "There's a military evacuation point in Ocala," one of the technicians offered. "Been monitoring their broadcasts. They're holding the line there for now." Tony took charge, his crew chief experience showing. "Anyone with medical training goes. Anyone with combat experience. The rest draw lots." No one argued. The unfairness of it all hung heavy in the air, but survival had its own cruel logic. In the end, we selected 4 besides myself. Emma, a combat medic who'd been working race security. Brian, a structural engineer who knew the area's back roads. Sarah, a mechanic who could keep the car running. And Tony himself, whose clear thinking we'd need. The others would try for the military roadblocks on foot, traveling light and quiet. I gave them the keys to the broadcast booth. Maybe they could hold out there until help arrived. We all knew it was a thin hope. Getting to the car was its own nightmare. We moved in formation, Emma taking point with her baton while I guarded our rear. The infected seemed to be everywhere, their shadows stretching long in the setting sun. One grabbed Brian's jacket. He twisted free, but his panic sent him stumbling into an equipment cart. The noise drew more of them. We ran, abandoning stealth for speed. I reached the car first, jumping in and firing up the engine. The others piled in as the infected closed in, their twisted faces illuminated by the headlights. Emma was last, slamming her door shut just as grasping hands reached for her. The Chevy's tires spun on blood-slicked pavement as I floored it. Bodies bounced off the reinforced body panels. These cars were built to take hits. Through the windshield, I could see the speedway's main exit ahead, and beyond that, the darkening city skyline. "They're saying it's everywhere," Tony said quietly, monitoring the emergency frequencies. "Miami's gone dark, Jacksonville's burning, military's falling back to defensive positions." I guided the car onto the access road, muscle memory taking over as I worked the gears. The engine's roar seemed to draw infected from everywhere, but nothing could catch us now. We were moving too fast, too precise. The sun disappeared behind Daytona's buildings as we hit the main road. Fires burned in the distance and sirens wailed from every direction. The world I'd known, the world of checkered flags and victory lanes, was gone. Now there was only survival, moment by moment, mile by mile. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The speedway was disappearing into darkness, its massive form a silent testament to how quickly everything could change. 12 hours ago, I'd been fighting for a championship. Now I was fighting for something far more precious. "Head west," Brian suggested from the back seat. "Stay off the main highways, less populated areas." I nodded, downshifting as we turned onto a side road. The Chevy's engine hummed smoothly, ready for whatever lay ahead. We had a full tank of gas, some basic supplies, and each other. It would have to be enough. Behind us, Daytona burned. Ahead, uncertainty stretched like an endless track. But I'd spent my life handling cars at high speed, making split-second decisions where hesitation meant disaster. Those skills had new meaning now. This wasn't a race anymore, it was survival, and the flag had just dropped on humanity's darkest night.